I just put a blanket over the green screen because I didn't know how to get a virtual background up.
Are you in Charlotte right now?
No, I'm in
Okay.
Ohio.
So, Fred, thanks for doing this again. Heading down to Charlotte soon for the big week one opening matchup against Carolina. Baker Mayfield and the Browns. You couldn't have written a better script, huh, Fred?
Yeah, as soon as the decision was made to part ways with Mayfield, you kind of saw this as being a destination place, and so I'm sure he has it circled, and the Browns have it circled. I mean, it really is the Browns' less than ideal situation when you have the guy you traded and gave up so much for, suspended. So you're going in with a backup quarterback, and this very well, could be that Baker Mayfield wins this battle. I think ultimately the Browns will win the war, and the season and the future, but this game I'm not so sure about.
All right. Well, I will say though, looking at some of the handicapping for the game, I had some interesting. Here are some interesting trends. I got the most interesting one that, and I don't like try to cherry pick, so it's just whatever works works. And this is the only one that I found that worked for both teams in this game. One pro, one con, working for the Browns. The Browns are 7-3 against the spread in their last 10 road games. And Carolina under Matt Rule is 1-6 against the spread as a home favorite. So they don't do too well at home under Matt Rule. And I think it's, what is it, like about a 4-point spread or 3-point spread or something like that. So it's not that high. I think this is going to be one of those games. I think it's going to be one of those really like 16-14 type of, 21-20 games. So but before we get into that, let's talk about. I have to. Okay, how many questions have you had over the last few months on DeShaun Watson?
Oh, I mean, until even after the final suspension came down, that was all I was being interviewed about all over the country. I got tired of talking about it. Most of us here in Cleveland got tired of talking about it. It's not
No.
things you want to talk about, court proceedings and accusations. And, I understand that's what on everybody's mind, but pretty much we were put in defensive positions like we made these decisions. And it's like, well, I'm covering football, and so yeah, it's good to be back talking about football. But up until he went on suspension, actually just last week, that was the predominating, topic and everything. Middle of March when they made the decision and went after, Deshaun Watson. So, yeah, it's been 5 6 months of kind of turmoil, settled down a little, but really, you know, they really put their season, and they have a roster built to win now, and they really have kind of put their season in a predicament because I don't know if Jacoby Brissett can keep them afloat for 11 games. That's what they really have to do is stay in the hunt, and I don't know if they can, do worse than 5-6. I think 5-6 to me is about the worst record they can have in order to have a chance to still make the playoffs this year before Watson gets back. And I don't think you can assume he's going to step on the field, immediately
Yeah.
and run the table. I mean, that guy hasn't played in 2 years, and he looked pretty shaky and has very little exposure in the preseason. So I think he's an elite quarterback, but I don't think he's going to just walk out of the tunnel with a cape on, and lead them undefeated, from the get go.
And what about Brissett? Because from an outsider's point of view, you see he's bounced around here and there, and he's had some really remarkable quarterbacks that he's had to follow. It's just incredible, or hold the fort for. It's just amazing. Um, but you look at it and you're like, you're not really. You would have thought that he would have had a better overall record based on how it appeared that his career, the start he got off to, and just felt, and then you look at it, and you're like, well, this isn't all that great. And is that kind of what your concern is as well, and why the Browns fans are probably concerned too? Is they look at his body history and they go, well, he's not going to help us win games. He just better not. He just better not lose games for us.
Yeah, that's pretty much the summation. I mean, he stepped in when Tom Brady had the deflate gate, and that was kind of a difficult situation. And then, if you remember, Andrew Luck
Yes.
abruptly retired,
Yes.
and on 2 weeks' notice, he stepped
Yep.
in. And I think that's 2019. And if the Browns can get that out of him, I think he played 15 games. He had 18 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. The key is the few interceptions. A lot of people look at last year, whether it was because of the injury or whatever. Baker Mayfield threw 17 touchdowns, but 13 interceptions. And there was at least 2 games, and I don't blame it all on him, but there's at least 2 games that he threw interceptions on the final drive where they just needed a score to win the game, and he wasn't able to get the job done. And so the feeling is that if Brissett can just not make those game-changing mistakes,
Yep.
they all have a chance. Plus, they feel they really upgraded their kicking game by getting Cade York out of LSU. He's been fantastic in the preseason. Last year, the kicking game cost them at least 2 games as well. 3 if you count the punter dropping a punt against the Chiefs, muffing it. And so that's their recipe for success. The defense, which played like a top 5 the last half of the season, they have 9 of the 11 returning, and they feel they'll even be better. So the top defense, create some turnovers, and manage the game with your running committee of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, Dearness Johnson, and have a good kicking game. So it might not be exciting, but I think that's what they feel, is that if they would have just had average play out of their quarterback last year, they'd have made the playoffs. They still were 8-9,
Sure.
as bad as Baker Mayfield played with the injury. And so that's kind of where it is. And I think that's the thinking, is Brissett, hey, he might not win you the game, but you need to get ahead and control it and not dig a hole
Yeah.
and hope to come from behind.
Yeah, that ain't gonna happen very often under Brissett. Okay, so let's because we talked around draft time, so that is available, of course, on our channel. You can check that out from a few months ago. But let's take a look now at some of the aftermath of the draft and the offseason and so forth. And you mentioned the running game, so I have to ask, what the Kareem Hunt situation? What's going on there? And do you think he's going to be here the whole year?
Well, I think a lot of it depends on how the season goes. Like I said earlier, they're built for winning now. I don't think they were expecting the fallout to be that Watson would be out for 11 games. I think they really felt it would be somewhere in the 6 to 8 range. And so now, if they're out of contention before Watson even comes back, which, they play 8 games, or I think it's 8 games before the trade deadline, they may move on from him. He's in the last year of his contract, as well as Dearness Johnson. It was a little surprise to many that they kept 5 running backs, but I think they feel that Johnson is too valuable to just cut him.
Yes.
Same way with Kareem Hunt. He's getting $6.2 million this year, and they basically have said, look, we're not renegotiating this year. You go out and have a big year, prove it to us, and then we'll talk about an extension from there. He did set out the team drills for 2 days during training camp, but I think he got the message pretty quick that this isn't going to get you anywhere. Go out and you're very valuable to the team. But then again, if they're out of contention,
Yeah.
I could see them trading him to get something out of him before he leaves in free agency, if that's what they choose. I think one of the two will be here going forward, whether it's Johnson or whether it's Hunt. It's just a matter of how the season goes. If, like I said, if they get out of it early, then I can see them kind of moving on from some of these guys on the last year of their deal.
And they like the rookie for it, correct?
They do. And he played very well in the preseason. And that's why a lot of people assume that this is the last year Hunt would be with the Browns. They would either move Ford or Johnson into the number 2 role. They might move on from both of them. They also like Demetric Felton. He's
Yep.
playing mostly as a wide receiver now, but he is also a running back. So they're very strong in that room. A lot of people thought maybe at the final cut down that some of these teams that had strong wide receivers that were going to have to move on, that they would have maybe swung a trade and said, instead of cutting Johnson, we'll give you Johnson for one of the receivers you were going to cut, but that didn't materialize. I do think that's still in the cards.
Okay.
They may try to be talking to teams to make a trade between now and up till the deadline, because the wide receiver really, in my opinion, is kind of shaky, but they feel they're going forward with what they have.
Yeah, taking a look at the receiver situation, and of course Jakeem Grant, who's more of a kick returner. Now, is he out for the entire season?
Yeah, he tore his Achilles on a non-contact drill and just in training camp, and they really were planning on him to be the punt and kick returner, and now they're scrambling again. They probably be by committee with Dearness Johnson, Demetric Felton, because they really were trying to upgrade that position. Yep. He was a 3-time Pro Bowl kick returner, so that was a big blow. I think he was going to be in the offense. Like, I saw him in training camp running with the first team in gadget plays, kind of like Tyreek Hill on jet sweeps and things like that. But yeah, that was a big blow to him. And so now they're trying to recover there, and their wide receivers, they got Donovan Peoples-Jones, who's shown, but he's now the number 2. So David Bell, a rookie, and Anthony Schwartz, are being counted on to be the 3 and 4. And Schwartz has really had trouble dropping the ball. He's got that great speed, but he hasn't been able to catch the ball. He's done well in practice, but in the preseason games, he had a lot of drops. David Bell was out for most of the training camp. He did show signs and was pretty reliable in the final preseason game. So I think he's going to be your 3rd receiver, maybe taking the Jarvis Landry role.
And Woods, is that more of we don't have someone better, or did he earn his spot, Michael Woods, the rookie?
Well, a side note, Greg, is that so far in the 3 years, Andrew Berry has not cut yet one of his draft choices. Woods was a 7th-round pick. Now, I will say in the early training camp when Bell and Schwartz were injured, Woods was looking very good. He was making all the plays in training camp, but then he pulled a hamstring, and he missed like the 3 last weeks of training camp. And a lot of people think, well, how can you put him on the roster if he's... So a lot of us thought he would get put on the roster and then placed on injury reserve, like short term. But he immediately started practicing again. So I believe that they have plans to use him, maybe out of necessity, because I don't know if they can really feel like they can trust Anthony Schwartz to start the season, but one of those guys is going to have to be their 4th receiver.
Okay, and then the offensive line is so important with this offense. The major situation coming in, of course, was at center, and could Nick Harris, how was he going to be able to be the man? And then Harris gets hurt. So what's his status? And now Posich is taking over. So what's going on there at center?
Yeah. Well, Harris, blew out his ACL in the second snap of the first preseason game, which was a big blow because they were counting on him to take over from J.C. Treader, who'd had missed a snap in 4 years. They moved on from him because of his salary was $11 million this year, and they have, Harris. That's what you get, a guy in the 5th round, you develop him. He's in his 3rd year, and he practiced. He took every snap with the first team all last year because Treader did not practice all week because of his ailing knee. He just showed up and played every Sunday. So they felt good that Harris was ready to step in. That's why they moved on from Treader. Posick, as you mentioned, he was a former 2nd-round pick of the Seahawks. They signed him on a 1-year deal, kind of as insurance. But, yeah, he's the guy right now. And a kid they drafted in the 7th round, Dawson Deaton, was a center. He tore his ACL right after Harris did, even though I don't think they were counting on him this year. that knocked two centers right off the depth chart. So they have Michael Dunn, who was kind of a guard filling in. He is now the backup center behind Posick. So they feel that Posick's like 6'6", so he's a different style than Harris. Harris was more like 6'1". He was more like getting under him. Posick is more power center. So they feel that he can get out and run, in the zone scheme, and they seem to be fine with him. There was some talk Treader hadn't resigned or retired at the time, that they thought since he didn't really go to training camp even last year, they could bring him in and he'd be ready to go. But then evidently the Browns didn't even show interest because he announced his retirement last week. So we'll see what happens. That's a big question. Then the other one is Jack Conklin. He tore his patella against the Ravens, missed the last 7 games or 8 games last year, and he's been rehabbing. He hasn't really taken many snaps with the first team here and there. Stefanski still said yesterday there's a chance he will play or start this week, but they're keeping everything close to the vest. We'll find out tomorrow probably if he's back on the field practicing with the first team, if he plays this week. So those are the big questions. They signed Joe Haig, and a lot of people thought that means Conklin's not ready to go because they already had Chris Hubbard as a backup. But Chris Hubbard's been kind of out of practice and missed the last 2 years with injuries. So we'll see what Conklin, it was a big blow when he went down last year. They never really recovered. They really need him back at right tackle. And we'll see if he's ready to go this week.
All right. Defensively, up on the front of the defensive line, this is the strength where you got Garrett and Clowney on the edges. That's huge. Brian is now there inside, and you got the rookies. So Winfrey inside, Wright on the edge, and the other 7th rounder, Thomas, made the team. So talk about some of the new guys that are going to help up front.
Well, they're really counting on Jordan Elliott to be a mainstay. They have 9 of the 11 starters coming back from last year's defense, and the 2 that did not return are the 2 Maliks, Malik Jackson, Malik McDowell. Both of them didn't have the greatest years last year, and they didn't seem to be too concerned that move on from either of them, but they didn't really make much of an effort to add. As you said, they added Taven Bryan. He was a former first-round pick of the Jaguars, but he really never did a whole lot with Jacksonville. But he signed to a 1-year deal. They're hoping he can find a home here. Andrew Berry likes those guys that were former first-round picks that go into their second contract without have really showing anything. So this is a chance for him. I haven't really seen big role from him, but he is going to be a starter. The other one, Jordan Elliott's in his 3rd year. He was a 3rd-round pick from Missouri. He was in the rotation his first 2 years, but I really never saw him make any big plays. But they have raved about him this whole offseason. He didn't play much in the preseason, but in the first game, he did break through, and he was all over Trevor Lawrence. But that was really it. Myles Garrett says he expects him to have a breakout year. He was the first guy he mentioned right off the bat when somebody said, who will have a breakout year? He said Jordan Elliott without hesitation. Okay. So that remains to be seen. Those 2 guys, Perry and Winfrey, a 4th-round pick, and Tommy Togiai, those are really the backups. Togiai in his 2nd year. Winfrey had a lot of hype, but hasn't really made a lot of plays as a rookie in the preseason. So I think that's the biggest question mark. A lot of people thought they would bring in a Sheldon Richardson or a Ndamukong Suh or one of those veterans that are sitting out there, but they seem to be content going with the young guy and seeing if Elliott, I think, is the key, if he can come through. And they're going to probably use Clowney inside some to help out as well.
Okay, and then Wright, has he looked good at all? Does he look like he's ready for some snaps?
Yeah, he had a good preseason. He had some pressures, and I think that they have Chase Winovich. They got in a trade from the Patriots to Right now, he would probably be, I'd say, the third defensive end, right third. It just depends. Right end, Winovich, behind those guys. And Isaiah Thomas really, he had a couple sacks in the preseason. Then he broke his hand, but he has been playing with a cast. So they like what they have with the young
Okay.
guys, and they're working them in. And I think the biggest question is the interior defensive
Yes.
lineman.
Okay. And then in the secondary, Emerson is the big new addition at corner, the third round pick. How has he looked? And then the other guy I noticed that made the team was the rookie that went undrafted, the Anthony Bell from West Florida.
Yeah, they really like the secondary, especially cornerbacks. They have a very deep room. Greg Newsome, Denzel Ward, they feel they can lock them on the outside. And the question is, who's going to be the third? Because I think that Newsome's going to go into the slot when teams are in the three wide receivers and either put Greedy Williams on the outside, former second round pick, or Martin Emerson, or AJ Green, third year from Oklahoma State. Martin Emerson has been very impressive. I know our lads had him ranked highly than most, but when he was drafted, most people thought the Browns don't need a cornerback, and he was the first guy they took from, but he's come in, and in the first preseason game, Trevor Lawrence threw an out to, I don't remember the receiver, but he went up and took the ball right out of his hands and went 76 yards for a touchdown. And he's kind of been a folk hero from the beginning. He's been all over the place, and I really think he's going to play a lot as a rookie, even though they have some pretty good ones out there. So it'll be interesting to see if, I think Greedy Williams will be the first guy to go with the three corners, but Emerson, I think, is going to play a lot. And then you said at safety, Anthony Bell has been the talk of training camp. He's made plays. I think the Browns are very big on this guardrail deal. And if you know his story, he's 25. He went to like three different community colleges, and then he ended up at West Florida. And he took a year off working construction with his dad to save up money to go to college. And so he's 25 years old. So a lot of times they take him off the draft board if they're not 21. If you look at the Browns, they draft almost all 20, 21, 22-year-olds. And so that's why they brought him in. And he's really played well. And he bumped, Javante Moffett off the roster. And so I think they're really hoping Grant Delpit's the guy that steps up this year. Last year was basically his rookie year because he missed his rookie year with the torn Achilles, and he showed some signs of big playmaking. And they have him and John Johnson and Ronnie Harrison returning. So Joe Woods likes to play three safeties, and so he's got his three back. And so they're going to play a lot of five defensive backs, whether it's three corners, two safeties, or three safeties, two corners. That's what they want to do with just two linebackers. And so that's the secondary looks pretty good right now. I mean, barring injuries,
Absolutely.
I think it could be one of the strengths.
I looking around the NFL, I don't think you find many secondaries that have as much deep talent that the Browns have. And like you said, though, it's a matter of keeping everybody healthy because I don't even know if this group, and I'm not talking about the rookies, of course, but if this group, even last year, most of them haven't really played together for a long period of time. So play them together, nobody gets hurt, and they could be really, really tough, especially if they get pressure from all over on the defensive line, including on the inside, which is what you, of course, has mentioned is definitely the big key to the defense, and which could really trigger everything and make this go from maybe a good defense to an elite defense this season.
Well, I'll say this, Greg. In the second half of the season, they ended up giving up 21 points on the season, which is good enough to win most games. The offense is what let them down last year. But in their final 11 games, they only gave up more than 16 points 4 times. They gave up 16 or less in 7 of the final 11 games, and they still lost some games down the stretch because the offense couldn't score points. And so the defense under Joe Woods, at the beginning, they had trouble. But as you said, when they came together and Clowney and Garrett started working well together and the secondary started playing well, they were really good. They were a top 10 defense. They finished 5th in the NFL. despite their early lapses in yards given up. They only gave up 310 yards a game. And in passing, they were fifth in the NFL, only gave up 202 yards a game. So that is really their calling card. And they feel they can pick up where they left off because, like I said, you got one of the keys is JOK from Notre Dame was learning his way. By the end of the year, he was all over the field, and they expect him really to step up this year and really be a playmaker to go with Garrett, Clowney, Delpit. They really have some good players on that defense, and that is kind of what a lot of people aren't really paying attention is that they feel this defense can be top 10 and keep them in games until DeShaun Watson comes where he can light up the scoreboard when he hits his stride.
Yeah, it's like you said, there's a lot of talent on this team, and every year it does change. That's sometimes that's good. For the Browns, you're like, well, if we could keep this group together now for another year with DeShaun Watson coming back next year, just imagine how good this entire team can be. So there's got to be a lot of optimism behind closed doors there in Cleveland once they get Watson back. And I'm not just even talking about this year. Okay, so just taking a look now at this matchup with Carolina. And what do you think? Because Carolina's got a pretty decent defense, but everybody's going to be talking about Mayfield, obviously. And the whole thing about, well, Mayfield knows the Browns defense, and the Browns defense knows Mayfield, all that kind of stuff. What does your gut tell you as far as the type of, what are you expecting from Baker Mayfield if he's as healthy as he's supposed to be?
Yeah, I mean, the Browns said that obviously they were done with Mayfield. I mean, I was one of the few proponents to say that until they got resolution with Watson, because there was talk he was going to be out the whole season, and even 11 games now, I still personally would have held on to Mayfield because he is better than Jacoby Brissett. Yes. And he's a good NFL starting quarterback, above average in my opinion. He's not elite. The reason they moved on from him because they felt in their eyes they had a chance to get an elite quarterback, and that's what they felt they needed to have to compete with Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and those. But with that said, I realized that they felt there was no way they could bring him back. But I saw it another way. He was going to get $19 million either way, and it was a divorce waiting to happen. But Mayfield played his best when his chip was major on his shoulder, and he said, "Look, Baker, you don't like us, we don't like you, but go out here and win games, and you can go wherever you want and get your big contract." And vice versa. If he wants to pout and stay home, he doesn't get paid. Nobody wants him anyway. But they decided there was no way they were bringing him back, so they traded him. They're paying $10.5 million for him to go away and play against him this week. That tells you all you need to know how much they wanted to move away from him. With that said, Mayfield is built for these type of games. He just seems like this is the game he plays his best. I've seen him play very well. Last year against the Bengals, even with the injury, he shot up and down the field. They do have the playmakers and and McCaffrey and DJ Moore and I don't know what to expect. The defense, though, quietly, I think they really feel they can attack Mayfield because they saw him every day in practice, and with especially he got a lot of passes batted down because he's short, and he's best when he gets out of the pocket. And I think Clowney and Garrett are going to contain the pocket and keep him in there. And I think Joe Woods is going to send guys like JOK and Delpit and Martin Emerson from every direction to try to make him get rid of the ball quick because he does not make quick decisions. If his first read isn't there, that's when he's got into trouble, is forcing the ball into the thing. So they're going to try to create turnovers. And then on the offense, I just think, Brissett's going to try not to lose the game and pound the ball with Chubb and Hunt. And I think the tight end, Njoku and Harrison Bryant, are going to be heavily involved this year. You're almost going to see them, because of the questions at wide receiver outside of Amari Cooper, get the ball to them more on tight end screens and short little passes to move the chain. But I just think anything could happen. I said earlier, Mayfield could win the battle. I think ultimately the Browns will win the war. I think DeShaun Watson is an elite
Yes.
quarterback. You can take everything off the table. When he and the Browns, I believe, would have made this trade, even if they knew he was out for a year, because they feel that most quarterbacks today play 8, 10 years. He's younger than Baker Mayfield. He just turned 27. So if he comes back, he still could be into his mid
Sure.
30s. You still might have him 7, 8, 10 years. And they have not solved the quarterback position since 1999. And you could go all the way back to the mid 90s with Bernie Kosar. They've been looking for a franchise quarterback. They thought they had it with Baker Mayfield. He's the best they've had, but they still didn't feel he was what they needed to get where they wanted to go.
Well, like I said with Watson, when he comes back, and if they're in contention or whatever happens this year, they maintain this group for the next few years, a majority of this group, and this team is going to be contending for the Super Bowl. It's that easy. He's that good. We all know that. And I think there's some exciting times coming for the Cleveland Browns. Not sure if it's this year, again, because of the position they put themselves in, but that's the way they wanted to go. And we'll find out how it all starts on Sunday. And we'll see how Jacoby Brissett also takes it, because everybody's going to be talking about Mayfield, and you get the feeling Brissett's going to be going, hey, what about me? I'm a pro quarterback. So,
Well, yeah, that's what they're trying to do. I think he's using a little bit under the radar, to maybe surprise some
yeah.
people. And, I've seen him play really well. And against, they had the Eagles in for 2 days, and he played very well at times. And there was times where he was like, I just think they want him to stay within himself. He can get out of the pocket a little bit, but I've been a proponent. I've really been impressed with Joshua Dobbs. He's a guy that really has come out of nowhere, thrown 17 passes in his first 5 years, with the Steelers. But in the preseason, I know it's the preseason, but he really was a spark. He led the Browns on 9 touchdown drives, and he looked more like a DeShaun Watson type of quarterback than
Wow.
Brissett. And I think that Kevin Stefanski's really on him and his coaching staff to think outside the box and put a package together to utilize Dobbs. You can't look at Brissett as the franchise quarterback and, we can't take him out no matter what, like you do. You got to look at Dobbs as a change of pace or a relief pitcher. If things aren't working, throw him out there, see what he can do. He was making things happen. He had a 40-yard run for a touchdown in one game, and he was electric. Again, it was the preseason, but everybody knows he can run, but can he throw? And he really threw the ball well in the preseason. So I think a little dose of him makes the defense think. And I'll see. Stefanski's been very conservative, in my opinion, the first 2 years. And I think they really got to think outside the box and do whatever they can do to get to 5 or 6 wins in these first 11 games. And the first 4 games are the most winnable, in my opinion. And that this first game is huge. They need to do whatever they can to win. The team's only won one time in their first game since 1999. And that was 2004. So they've got off to terrible starts. They need to go all in and get this win, and then try to at least be 3-1 after 4 games. And maybe you got some momentum, and you can claw your way to get to the 5-6 win mark.
I like the Joshua Dobbs there. I mean, because you never know with these quarterbacks, especially when they go from one team to another, one system to another. When things haven't worked out, like you said, he hasn't thrown many passes in the pros. Not saying he's going to become a star or anything like that, just like you're not saying that. But you just never know. That's what's so great about sports, is that you can change scenery, you can change coaching staffs, and sometimes it just clicks, and you're in the right spot at the right time, and we'll see whether or not he gets his chance. If he does, I'll remember this conversation, that's for sure.
Well, think about it. He was with the Steelers. It just, on the surface, doesn't look like a fit. You had Ben Roethlisberger. Yeah. What kind of offense is Joshua running quarterback or mobile? It just, unless they had in mind him to be in the Wildcat or something. It makes sense that he didn't ever play and he never, got a chance. So who knows? Very smart guy. He's like a he's like a nuclear physicist or something, his major. I mean, he's got a photogenic memory, and I don't know, maybe he won't do it in the games, but he's 27 now, so he's mature, and he's got that athleticism, very similar to Watson. Obviously, he doesn't throw as well as Watson does, but why wouldn't you give him a shot if it isn't really going well with Brissett?
Well, who knows if Brissett doesn't stay healthy? And maybe we'll see Dobbs. It is the NFL.
Yeah,
so
that's why a lot of them felt you got to go get another quarterback when Watson's, because you have a guy with no experience only one snap away behind Brissett. But now I think they're confident that Dobbs can be the backup. But they're collecting quarterbacks here. I mean, they got 5 on the roster right now. They got Kellen Mond. They kept Josh Rosa on the practice squad, and still you have Watson, suspended list. So it's like they completely did an overhaul of the quarterback room. They're all in that 6'2", 6'3", 200 and some pounds, mostly mobile. They turned it over from what they had previously, with a shorter, pocket passer type quarterback. So we'll see what happens.
Fred, appreciate it as always. I got to ask you to make sure that we put in the right information, because we're going to have links in the description area for our viewers, and they get an opportunity to access the content and the links, especially for your shows. So where are you doing shows right now? Your own podcast, or do you make appearances?
Yeah, on the OBR.com. I'm on YouTube and Twitch. We have a live show 7 o'clock on Monday and Wednesday. Wednesday's my show. Monday I'm on a panel. And then everything we have is linked on the OBR.com. But outside of that, I'm on Cleveland radio show, WTAM, Sunday morning on the pregame kickoff show. And then I'm on Monday morning drive on WTAM at 10 till 8. And then I'm also do a Browns wrap up at 5:05 every Monday. Today I'm on Tuesday because of Labor Day, but so
you're busy.
WTAM AM 1100 in Cleveland.
That's awesome. All right, everybody wants you. Everybody wants a piece of Fred. So, Fred, appreciate it. And again, in the comments section, by the way, let us know what you think about this interview. If you have any questions for Fred, if you do, I'll pass them along to Fred. And since he has a YouTube account, he can answer them himself. So let us know what you think. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel as well and share the video to your fellow Cleveland Brown fans. And Fred, I hope we get an opportunity to talk a couple more times during the season. Not to this length, but anytime we have these long interviews, it's because it's, it's off season or it's the beginning of the season and we're setting things up. But we can get some, shorter interviews during the season to kind of find out what's going on. That would be great, and I appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks, Greg. Thanks for having me on.